Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. And today, I'm going to be going over my Week 6 Superior 10. We've got some motion this week. Honestly, a lot of teams stayed in a similar range. As we get farther into the season, there's not going to be as many big risers or big fallers. But still some teams moving up, still some teams falling. Starting here with number 10, making a re-entry into this top 10. We've got the Jacksonville Jaguars after beating last week's number 1 team, the Buffalo Bills, in London. I mean, that alone serves a reason for them to rise. I think Trevor Lawrence is a top 5, 6 quarterback in the NFL. I know he's one of PFF's highest graded quarterbacks this year and just makes a ton of really good, nice throws, hangs in the pocket, and that just was on full display against the Bills, which has been one of the best defenses in the league this year. And he was able to get things going with Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones. So he was able to spread it out. I mean, the Jaguars offense looked really, really good. And then the defense was able to slow down an offense that has looked almost unstoppable the past few weeks. So there's just a lot to like on both sides of the ball. Again, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley. I mean, Tyson Campbell is one of my favorite corners in the league right now. I think he's playing at a very high level. The Jaguars looked good. And for those reasons, they're my number 10 team this week. After a nice win in London, they're going to get to come home against the Bills. So then at number 9, I've got the Cleveland Browns. Not too much to say here. I mean, there's not much reason to move them. They had a bye week. I still like them in the top 10. I know some people might not agree with this after a tough loss to the Ravens, but I think a lot of this depends on Deshaun Watson. And based on what we saw in that Tennessee game, the last time that we saw him, I'm liking the odds of him coming back and looking good. Got another week to rest, and I think this Browns team can come out firing. Myles Garrett, obviously one of the best defensive players in the league, and I think this is probably the best defense in the league, the Browns. And this offense, if Deshaun Watson can really get things moving with his weapons and a good offensive line, I think this is a very scary team. So Browns at number 9, again, bye week, not too much to say. I'm excited to see what they can do this week. But yeah. Then at number 8, I've got the Detroit Lions, who, I mean, they're staying at number 8, but I just have been very much impressed with the things I've seen from them. They had a nice win against the Panthers, scoring 42 points. I mean, it is the Panthers, but still a big offensive week. I mean, this is the highest graded passing offense in the NFL, to go along with Jared Goff being PFF's highest graded quarterback through 5 weeks of action, which is crazy. I mean, I've always been a Jared Goff naysayer, a doubter, but he's been playing well. Then there's no doubt about it in an offense with a lot of good weapons. I mean, Josh Reynolds has been there for him. The scheme has been really nice. They've added Jamison Williams in this past week, who I think played about 50% of snaps. I think that's only going to increase. And he was my number 1 receiver in 2022. I think he's a very explosive player. He's going to add more to this already explosive offense, give Jared Goff more in a system that is already really solid. So I just think this offense is high octane, great passing offense, and that's what you need in today's NFL. And I think this team, because of that, can win games in the NFC. And then if you look on the opposite side of the ball, I mean, you know, not everything is perfect, but one very bright spot, Aiden Hutchinson. He's been phenomenal. One of the best edge rushers in the league. He has the most pressures of any player in the NFL. And I think 6 more than Micah Parsons, who has the second most pressure. So it really isn't even close, which that alone is very impressive. I know his pressure rate is not quite number 1, but it's still top 10. And so there's a lot of things to like there. That's exactly what you hope for out of a number 2 pick. And I think that's just the basis for this defense. Get after the quarterback and make teams uncomfortable. And I think as the season progresses and you kind of get pressure and then figure out the secondary, you know, who are your guys on the back end? I think this Jaguars team can be very well-rounded. Again, that defense, if it continues to perform well, is going to be very formidable when paired with this explosive offense that can score points at any time. get long drives going with David Montgomery, etc., and continue to see how they involve Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he can continue to have a bigger and bigger role as the season progresses. So I like the Lions at 8. I think it's a very exciting team. They've got the Buccaneers this week and then the Ravens on the road. So some interesting games coming up for them. But Lions at 8. Yeah. Then at number 7, I've got the Dallas Cowboys, who, man, what a tough loss to the 49ers. It just looked like they were on a completely different playing field. And, sometimes games happen like that. And I'm not going to... Do I think that the 49ers are 32 points better than the Cowboys? No way. But they played like it in that game, and the Cowboys were just pushed around in every aspect in general. And I do think this is partly a result of the 49ers just being that good. I mean, we'll talk about them in a little bit. But, I mean, there was some things to be concerned about for the Cowboys and some reason to drop them. I mean, this goes back to what I said. I think we've seen either a really dominant performance from the Cowboys this year or a performance where you kind of just leave yourself scratching your head. And I feel like that's kind of been a theme for Dallas over the past couple of years. And I think we might be seeing it once again. The 49ers just really exposed the middle of the field. I mean, George Kittle feasted, and Purdy just tore them apart in the passing game especially. I said Trevon Diggs, the loss of Trevon Diggs wouldn't do too much, and I don't know how much of an impact that had on this last game, but I think they really need to figure out things on the back end. And when you're facing a team like the 49ers that can attack you in so many ways, versatility up back there, being able to cover multiple guys is very key. And, that starts with the defensive coordinator and works its way down to the players. So there were a lot of questionable things there. Also on offense, I mean, they weren't really able to get much going at all. Tony Pollard, I think, has been the second least efficient running back in all of football in terms of broken tackles, explosive play rate, etc. Ironically, the only person that he's been more efficient than in the entire league is Ezekiel Elliott. But still, just not too much good here from the Cowboys. They drop. I still think this is a good team. I still think this team can figure things out in the NFC. But definitely a weak look here from the Cowboys, and they drop down to 7. And then at number 6, I've got the Baltimore Ravens, who had a very tough loss in division to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm just going to say it, this should be a 5-0 team. They've reached impressive levels of beating themselves. I mean, we talked about that Colts loss a couple weeks ago, and then this Steelers loss. It looked like they had it all wrapped up, and then they just somehow slowly let it slip away from their hands, figuratively and literally, as the Ravens wide receivers could not catch a ball for their life. I think there was 8 drops or something like that, 3 of which would have been touchdowns, which is just inexcusable. Lamar Jackson played phenomenal. He was PFF's highest graded offensive player this week, was hitting throw after throw after throw, and his receivers just were not catching it. Lamar played one of his best games of the season, maybe his best, and to only put up 10 points in that effort is definitely concerning. Now, I do think that it just was an off week. It happens. I mean, Mark Andrews isn't going to be dropping passes every week. Zay Flowers, he's still very talented. The Ravens are going to be fine on offense, and this defense has been one of the best in the NFL. I think it is a top 5 defense in the league. I know the 2 safeties have played phenomenal, Kyle Hamilton, Geno Stone, and Marcus Williams is only going to continue to get more healthy. They just got Marlon Humphrey back. Roquan Smith has been maybe the best linebacker in the league this year. So there's just a lot to like on that defense. And if Lamar Jackson keeps playing at a high level, the Ravens will be fine. I think the new scheme really looks good. And you can definitely tell the difference between this year and last year. So, the Ravens, they should be a 5-0 team. They're 3-2. They're going to be fine. I think they just need to stop playing down to their competition. I know it's Ravens Steelers, but when you're the better team, you have to play like it. I think the Ravens stay here at number 6. Still a very good team. Still a team that I think can compete in the AFC. Ravens at 6. Then at number 5, I've got the Miami Dolphins, who move up a couple spots, somewhat as a result of other teams dropping, but also because they had a nice win against the New York Giants. And one thing that was impressive to me about this week was, Tua had one of the lowest graded PFF games of any quarterback this week, and the Dolphins still cruise to victory. Yes, the Giants are not a good team, but they didn't need Tua to be delivering dime on dime on dime to win. They ran the ball. They still were able to move the ball in the passing game with all that explosive talent, which is promising for the Dolphins. They're not completely dependent on Tua having phenomenal games to win. I think one of the big losses this week for the Dolphins is obviously Devon Achane, who went down and is now on IR, which is tough because he has been absolutely phenomenal for them, breaking off big runs, touchdowns, has been the most efficient running back in the league, and it's not even close in almost any metric you look at. The Dolphins found themselves a stud, one of the fastest players in the NFL, super shifty, explosive. He just fits the Dolphins offense, and it's going to be tough for them to lose him. Now, they still have Raheem Mostert, but I think I saw Devon Achane, he per rush was averaging over 2 yards after contact per carry, while Raheem Mostert is under 1. So there definitely is a difference there, and I'm curious to see how that will show in these coming weeks. But the Dolphins, it was a great team win. Their defense is good, and obviously this offense is explosive, and Tua will have his bounce-back weeks. So good win from the Dolphins. They move up a couple spots here. They're in my top 5. This team can win a Super Bowl, in my opinion. Tough loss to Devon Achane, but the Dolphins will be good. They'll be great. So Dolphins at 5. And then my number 4 team, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles, and I feel like they often kind of find themselves falling around this spot. They are in my top tier of teams, and they're just so well-rounded. They've got the best offensive line in the NFL. Every metric will tell you that. Pass blocking, run blocking, whatever. The Eagles' offensive line is absolutely phenomenal. Making things easy for that run game, making things easy on Jalen Hurts with great weapons. It's just a recipe for success for the Eagles. On defense, there's a lot of things to like too. I've talked about Jalen Carter, who has the most pressures out of any defensive tackle, tied with Aaron Donald, which for a rookie is beyond impressive. There's just so many pieces to like on this team. And, this was a team that made the Super Bowl last year. I see no reason for aggression. One game, A.J. Brown balls out, Devontae Smith balls out the next game. It's just what the Eagles do. And they had a very nice win against a team that I think is a good team with the Rams, who just got Cooper Kupp back. Matthew Stafford has been on a roll, but they were able to get the ball moving on the ground. A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, both over 100 receiving yards. It was just a great all-out performance from the Eagles, who have some exciting games in the coming weeks against the Jets, Dolphins, who were my number 5 team. So that'll be a fun game to look forward to. But the Eagles are number 4. Not too much to say. I feel like I say the same thing every week with them. Well-rounded, best offensive line in the league. Jalen Hurts is phenomenal. They can win even when things aren't going perfectly. The Eagles are my number 4 team. Very great. So then at number 3, I've got the Buffalo Bills, who were my number 1 team just last week. I raved about them. And then, of course, they show up to London and don't look like the number 1 team in the league. Now, I still think this team is very good. I'm not going to overreact to this loss, but I think I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself last week. There were definitely some concerns in this game. This did not look like the number 1 offense in the NFL. It was a confusing loss for the Bills. Why 3 weeks of absolute dominance from this offense and then just a week of kind of stagnant, confusing play. I do think this was a little bit of a come down off of a big in-division win against Miami. You're on a high. You kind of have to travel to London. It's kind of like, you're playing at a time your body's not used to playing at against a team who's been in London for a week, didn't have to travel. I think that could have thrown the Bills off for sure and definitely been a part of why they lost. But I think the Bills will be fine. This is a team that can definitely compete. I think this is still one of the best teams in the NFL. I just think they have some inconsistencies they need to work out on offense, especially rushing the ball. I mean, they rushed for 29 yards against this Jaguars defense, which just you can't do. That's been a talking point of many people for the past couple of years. Can the Bills run the ball? And in some games this year, they've looked like they have been able to. They look like they can. And if they can, this is a elite offense. But when they can't, just like against the Jaguars, kind of take some of their options away. Josh Allen still had a great week, over a 90 PFF grade. But, when you can't run the ball, there's only so much you can do, so much you can ask the quarterback to do. So Bills dropped down a couple spots here. I'm not too worried about them. I think they're going to be fine. They've got at home against the Giants. They play the Patriots in a couple weeks. They've got a nice couple game stretch here to where they can kind of reorient themselves, have a nice couple streak of wins, and reaffirm themselves up at the top of this list. Teams lose. The Bills just lost this past week in kind of an unexpected way. They will be fine, but they're my number 3 team this week. And then moving on to my number 2 team, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs. All reliable. They got the win against the Vikings. They're 4-1 after losing week 1. But Patrick Mahomes played well. The defense played pretty well. And, one thing of note, they really spread the ball out on offense, which was good to see. I think it just shows the power of having Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid running your offense. Anyone can succeed. They had 10 different guys catch passes from Mahomes on Sunday. 8 of those people catching multiple passes, which is just really crazy. They spread the love there in Kansas City. And, Travis Kelce was the focal point, and they kind of worked out from there. And I think if they can continue to do that in this offense as the season moves forward, they're going to be fine. They're going to be great. I've said this time and time out. When Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, Andy Reid's your head coach, this is a team that you expect to see come January, come February. And the Chiefs just showed it again. They're my number 2 team. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. They're my number 2. Then at number 1, making the return to number 1, the number 1 team in every ranking, except for last week, the San Francisco 49ers. What a performance against the Dallas Cowboys. Made them look silly in every aspect. It was just an all-around flawless, near flawless performance by the 49ers. Shut down this Dallas offense. Just made this defense looks silly. In the middle of the field, they were able to get George Kittle going. That's the thing about this offense. You never know who's going to light it up. It could be George Kittle, it could be Christian McCaffrey, it could be Deebo Samuel, it could be Brandon Ayuk. You just do not know. But whoever shows up, Brock Purdy's going to deliver. Kyle Shanahan's going to get him open. And they're going to have a big week. And that's just, you can't do anything about it. This just feels like an unstoppable train right now. This defense is phenomenal. Nick Bosa is phenomenal. They just make you uncomfortable. They are fantastic at stopping the run and don't really allow you to get that passing game going. And they just suffocate you. And they run the ball well. They score. And it's just, this team is the best team in football. I'm curious to see how Brock Purdy continues to play and what he can do against some of these top quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, come playoff time. But the 49ers are number 1. Not too much else needs to be said after a dominant performance against the Cowboys. So that's my superior 10. heading into week 6. Let me know your thoughts down below, who I have too high, who I have too low. So thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, until next time, peace.